And hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you may be. We're going to talk about importing a.csv files. It is slightly more complicated than the .txt file. You will see in a little while why that is the case. I have uploaded my CSV file. I've uploaded a file called weightgain.csv. It's about tracking the weight gain of rats, actually, but you can assume this is anything. And they're on this different kind of diet and so forth, and the weight gain is being tracked. So that's the file, the data file.csv file we're going to be dealing with. So we're going to start. I think I will go through the code first casually, and then of course I will explain in detail what we're doing. So we do start the data step with data, and we will name our data file. So I'll just give it a name, weight gain. That seems to make sense. The next statement is the same as the .txt file. In file, we are looking for the location of our external file. So we're going to go right click, properties, look at the location. We're going to control copy, and we're going to control V or paste. Notice that now we're using quotation marks instead of the apostrophe. Now here is where we are using some new things. These are called in-file options, and we're going to use 3 of them. One of them is DSD, one of them is misover, and another one is first obs, and I'm going to set it at 2. I will explain these in just a second. The next step is input. Of course, this is the statement where we say what our variables are. We state our variables. So my variables are ID. So I'm going to assume this is ID, source type, and then weight gain. So source type weight G. And then we always end with the run statement telling our program to run the code. So let's start now looking at the code in more detail. We're going to start with these in-file options up here. We'll start with DSD. So DSD does 2 things for us primarily. The first thing it does is when it spots quotation marks around values, just like this, it gets rid of them. So we have that for this .csv file. It's going to get rid of those quotation marks for us. The second thing DSD does is when it sees this, 2 commas, it looks at that as a missing value. So in a .csv file, it's called a comma separated values. Values are separated by commas. So when it sees 2 commas, it knows a value is missing. The second statement, misover, basically scans your data set and at the end sees wherever there are missing values and it records as such. The final thing, the final in-file option is first obs. And what you're telling the program is that your first observation starts on the second line. So when we did the .txt file, the observations actually started on the first line because we didn't actually name the variables in the file. So if you take a look right here, we don't have variable names up here. It starts, our observations start on line 1. But in this case, we have variables right here, and then our observations actually start on the second line. So that is what we're telling it with this statement. Also, when we look at our input statement, we also have some differences. The differences happen because we're not only dealing with numbers, as was the case in our .txt file. Year, these are numbers. Salary, these are numbers. We're now starting to deal with letters, as is in the case of the source variable and the type variable here. So what that means, and what we have to do, is add a $sign to source and type for these things to actually show up properly. Whenever you have letters or whenever you have a combination of letters and numbers, you have to use the $sign for this data to show up properly. So with that out of the way, we are done and we can actually run now our program. And there it is. Everything looks perfect. Everything looks the way it should be. Now, I'm just going to take the $sign away from source and away from type. And you will now notice that it's not going to show up. So you see now source and type are missing. Now this is especially important for, let's say you have an ID that has numbers and letters. So if you want to make sure that shows up properly, don't forget the $sign for those types of variables. We're done. That was super easy, and we'll see you next lesson.